Hi, this is Jill Riley, and I am the Assistant Communications Director for the Pac Northwest Conference. And I am here today with Chris Jones, who appears to be being burnt by an airplane behind him. But Chris is from Arlington United Church, and we have a really interesting topic to talk about. But welcome, Chris. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for the time.
I am learning, we had in our discussion before the interview, I learned a lot about what Chris is doing with an organization called Fishnet. And Chris is an amateur radio operator and has created this group. And I'm going to let him explain a little bit about what, first of all, amateur radio, its benefits and what it can do for us. And then secondly, how that links into the church and some disaster repair preparedness. So first of all, Chris, give us a little bit of information about amateur radio, ham radio. What is this system about?
So, amateur radio and ham radio, they're two words that mean the same. Sometimes ham is referred to. Well, you're just hamming it up because you can use these radios and talk all across the world, and that's a little bit about that. And amateur radio started originally in the late 1800s and really kind of got its start in the 1900s as a way for people to communicate, as a way to communicate across the town, across the community, the state, and the world. So it was using voice. Amateur radio operators ended up also using Morse code. But that's kind of like the beginning of amateur radio. And then it kind of morphed into counties utilizing radios to reach out to what they call emergency operation centers at various cities. There's so that's on the amateur side. On the commercial side, which we'll just talk about briefly, fire departments use radios, 911 call centers, police use radios. So amateur is, as the term goes, we don't get paid for what we do. So that's
So what application does this have to the church?
we're already doing preparedness. Some churches are a part of the Red Cross system for shelters.
Mhm.
So why not add communications to that? And we practice every week with our fishnet so that we're familiar with how to use the radios. And we just talk with each other and say, what's happening at your community of faith. We don't limit it to just the Christian group because we can serve no matter where you are. And by doing it every week, you get familiar with, again, the operations and other communities of faith and who are amateur radio operators and who are interested in that.
Right. So in a disaster, if we're talking a major disaster, what role, give me a scenario in which radios would be useful in a major disaster.
Right. So I'll give you an example. We had the Oso slide here about 10 years ago, and it killed 43 people and it covered a major roadway. And it took out all forms of all lines of communication. So what amateur radio operators were able to do on either side of the slide is communicate between the mayors to say, hey, what do you need? What is our focus? Life safety is always the focus, but Snohomish County Auxiliary Communication Service provided communications between the two sides. What roads are open? Where can we go? Who do you have over there? What resources do you have over there? Well, we have this, we have that. So, and we can also send emails over the radio. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's called WinLink. Yep, you use a laptop computer connected to this thing called a modem, and then that's connected to the radio. And you type out a form, you can include a photograph, and you send that out over very high frequency, ultra high frequency, and it's received by the radio, and it comes back through the modem, and it pops up on your laptop. It's like, oh, there's the person that we were looking for. They're located here, and then we can relay. That's what we do. We are radio relay operators, and we relay that information to an emergency operations center.
So now talk to me specifically about Fishnet. How did that come about, and what are kind of the short and long-term goals of that group?
So Fishnet was started after a presentation with a group of ministers in Arlington, the Arlington Ministerial Association. I was interested to find out how many radio operators there were in our community, specifically within our churches. Made the presentation in April of 23, and in January of 24, we started, and then we reach out each week and just say, this is the fishnet. Are there any communities of faith out there that would like to uh, connect with our group? And our goal is to get familiar with radio equipment, how to use them, because you don't want to wait until the disaster happens.
How cost prohibitive is it to participate with a radio?
Well, let's see here. So for from the amateur radio side, there are a lot of inexpensive radios that are probably $50 or so, but you also need to take a class. You can do it online, or you can do it in person, and then you take a test so that you can get your license to be able to talk on there. You can also utilize an app called Echolink when you get licensed, and you can use your cell phone. I know that's cheating, but you're using a cell phone over radio and you can talk all across the world.
Well, we talk as a church about being prepared for disasters and also being a resource to the community if there is a disaster. And this is just another vein of us being able to serve our communities well. So I think this is a really
The mayors to say, hey, what do you need?
great avenue for that.
Yeah, that gives, when you're connected with your community, with your county, with your cities, and you can say, hey, we can provide reunification resources to you through our amateur radios operators. We can provide resources, identify where things are if there is no other form of communication. So it's not a heavy lift. It's not overly cost prohibitive. And you can start off with family radios or what's called GMRS, General Mobile Radio Service. If you're interested in doing missionary work, you can utilize the radios to do that. Just understand what the laws of the country are.
Right. Okay. Well, if you don't mind, we will link information for you and for Fishnet with this interview. So people, if they have questions or interest, they can get in contact with you. I really appreciate your time and information and expertise here. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you. So this is Chris Jones, KI7HSH. Been a pleasure.